Welcome to Staff Works Explained. If you are here for the first time, please consider subscribing to this channel. In today's video, we'll be talking about Talanta Sports City, which is nearing completion, and we'll give the story behind the Kenya's most ambitious stadium project. A few years ago, the idea sounded almost impossible. Kenya had not built a major national stadium from the ground up in decades. That was in 1980s. The country's sporting infrastructure was increasingly struggling to meet international standards. Major tournaments were bypassing the country, and the football fans had become accustomed to watching global events unfold elsewhere. Today, however, a new landmark dominates the skyline along Ngong Road in Nairobi. The 60,000-seat Talanta City Stadium, which has recently been renamed Raila Odinga International Stadium, is entering the final stages of construction. As of June 2026, government officials have reported that the main stadium has reached approximately 90 or to 95% completion rate, with supporting facilities almost nearing completion. Recent inspections have shown that the stadium is moving from structural construction into finishing and commissioning phase, while the newly planted Bermuda grass pitch has successfully entered the germination stage, one of the final critical milestones before operation testing begins. Yet, Talanta Sports Stadium, or Raila Sports Stadium, is more than a stadium. It is a story about sports policy, infrastructure delivery, innovative financing, military-led project oversight, public accountability, and Kenya's ambitions to position itself as a leading sports destination in East Africa and Africa at large. It is a project that raises difficult questions about public spending, debt, transparency, and whether the benefits will ultimately justify the cost. As the completion draws closer, these questions have become more important, not less. So let's start by asking ourselves, why was Talanta Sports City built? Officially, Talanta Sports City was conceived to address two major challenges. The first was Kenya's chronic shortage of international compliant sporting infrastructure. For years, the country relied heavily on Moi International Sports Center Kasarani, Nyayo National Stadium, as well as several regional facilities. While these venues hosted important events, many required significant upgrades to satisfy evolving FIFA and CAF standards. The second driver was Kenya's successful bid, together with Uganda and Tanzania, to host 2027 Africa Cup of Nations AFCON. Winning the hosting rights brought opportunity but also responsibility. CAF requires host stations to provide modern competition venues, training facilities, media infrastructure, hospitality facilities, security systems, and transport access and operation support capable of accommodating one of Africa's largest sporting events. Government officials concluded that renovation alone would not be sufficient. A new flagship stadium would be required, and this is what brought Talanta Sports City Stadium, making it to become the flagship project. The facility is expected to host major AFCON matches, opening and closing ceremonies, international football competitions, rugby events, entertaining shows, and large gatherings. It is intended to not merely be an AFCON venue, but also as a long-term national asset capable of serving the country for decades after the tournament concludes. So what exactly is being built in this Talanta Sports City Stadium? One of the biggest misconceptions about Talanta Sports City is that it is simply a football stadium. It is not. The stadium forms the centerpiece of a much larger sports complex developed on former Jamhuri ground site. The main stadium has a seating capacity of approximately 60,000 spectators and has been designed primarily as a football-specific venue. Unlike many older African stadiums that combine athletics tracks with football facilities, Talanta was conceived with football as the primary focus. bringing spectators closer to the action and creating more modern match day experience. The wider project includes 3 modern facility pitches, athletics or athlete and team support facilities, media infrastructure, hospitality and VIP or very important person areas, corporate suites, security installation, broadcasting facilities, parking and access infrastructure, public circulation spaces, as well as landscaping and public amenities. The surrounding precinct is also being transformed. Road improvements, pedestrian infrastructure, footbridges and access roads are being developed to support movement of spectators during major events. Separate contracts worth billions of shillings have been awarded for supporting transport infrastructure around the stadium precinct. From a project management perspective, this is closer to the development of a sports district than construction of a standalone stadium. Let's now look at the cost, schedule and scope components of this project. The project has undergone significant cost evolution since its inception. Initial estimates placed cost approximately at 35 billion Kenya shillings. However, subsequent audits and disclosures indicated that the cost had increased substantially, with figures of approximately 45.85 billion Kenya shillings being cited by the Auditor General. Such increases are not unusual in major infrastructure projects, particularly where scope changes, design refinements, supporting infrastructure requirement, as well as accelerated delivery schedules are introduced. However, the magnitude of increase has generated controversy. Auditor General findings raised questions regarding project accounting, approval and cost escalation mechanism. Government agencies have maintained that expenditures relate to the expanded scope, delivery requirements associated with AFCON timelines. The project officially broke ground in March 2024. Originally targeted for completion in 2025, timelines subsequently shifted as construction progressed. By June 2026, government officials were targeting handover during 2026, well ahead of AFCON 2027. Let's now look at the procurement and the choice of contractor. The engineering, procurement and construction EPC contract was awarded to China Road and Bridge Corporation CRBC, one of the most experienced infrastructure contract operating in Kenya. CRBC is already known for delivering several landmark projects, including the Standard Gauge Railway and Nairobi Expressway. For government, the attraction was obvious. The project demanded a contractor capable of mobilizing rapidly, managing a compressed schedule, coordinating thousands of workers, and delivering complex structure within tight deadlines. Few firms operating in the region possess that capability. The procurement process was therefore driven as much by delivery capacity as by construction expertise. Whether that approach represented the optimal balance between competition and speed remains open to debate. However, there is little doubt that the government prioritized execution certainty over experimentation. This is the unusual role of the Kenya Defence Forces in this project. Perhaps the most distinctive feature of the project has been the role played by the Kenya Defence Forces KDF. Unlike conventional stadiums, Talanta Sports City has been delivered under a model in which KDF assumed responsibility for project oversight and supervision while CRBC remained the primary contractor. The rationale was straightforward. Government had previously been impressed by the speed with which military-led teams delivered the Ulinzi Sports Complex and other strategic infrastructure projects. Kenya Defence Forces brought several advantages for that matter. First, it introduced a command and control project management structure capable of accelerating decision making. Second, it strengthened coordination among government agencies. Third, it enhanced site security and operational discipline. Fourth, it reduced bureaucratic bottlenecks that often slow large public projects. The results are difficult to ignore. Within roughly 2 years, the project progressed from groundbreaking to over 90% completion. By Kenya infrastructure standards, that represents exceptionally rapid delivery timeline for a project of this scale. While not all of that performance can be attributed to military involvement, KDF supervisory role appears to have contributed significantly to maintaining schedule, discipline, as well as ensuring continuous progress. The question for policymakers is whether elements of this model can be replicated in other strategic projects without undermining conventional civilian procurement and oversight structures. Let's now look at the financing model. This is where the debate begins, the real debate for that matter. If the engineering story is impressive, the financing story is even more fascinating. Rather than relying entirely on direct budget allocation, the government adopted a securitization structure involving the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund and a special purpose vehicle known as Lindsay Finco. In simple terms, securitization involves converting future income streams into immediate funding. Instead of waiting years to collect future revenues, those future collections are pledged to investors who provide capital upfront. The money is used immediately while repayment occurs over time. In Talanta's case, future collections from the Sports, Arts and Social Development Fund were effectively used to support the financing structure. The fund itself receives revenue from sources including betting, gaming and lottery-related levies. To facilitate financing, an asset-backed security (ABS) was issued through Lindsay Finco. Asset-backed security differ from ordinary government borrowing. Investors are not relying solely on general government revenues. Instead, specific future cash flows are ring-fenced and dedicated for that payment or repayment. This creates greater certainty for investors but also reduces future flexibility for government. Advantage and disadvantage, pros and cons. So once revenues are pledged, they cannot be easily redirected elsewhere until investors have been paid according to the agreed structure. From a financial engineering perspective, the arrangement is somehow sophisticated. From a public policy perspective, it is controversial. The principal argument in favor is that it allowed Kenyans to mobilize billions of shillings rapidly without placing the entire burden on the annual budget. The principal argument against it is that future sports fund revenue have effectively been committed years into the future, and this limits the flexibility for future policymakers. Even more controversial was the investor structure. The offering was primarily targeted at institutional investors and high net worth investors rather than the general public. Supporters argue that this reflected regulatory requirements, transaction size, investor sophistication, as well as complexity of the instrument. Critics counter that ordinary citizens were effectively excluded from participating in an investment backed by public resources, while wealthier investors gained access to attractive returns. Whether that constitutes discrimination or simply reflects the reality of capital markets depends largely on one's perspective. What is clear is that financing structure deserves far more public scrutiny than it has received. The debate should not be reduced to whether the stadium is good or bad. The more important question is whether this represents the best way for Kenya to finance strategic infrastructure in the future. So let's now move to something different, where we compare Talanta Stadium with other stadiums. With a capacity of approximately 60,000 seats, Talanta immediately becomes one of Africa's largest modern football venues. It will surpass many stadiums currently used for CAF competition and place Kenya among the continent's leading stadium owners. Globally, however, it occupies a more modest position. World Cup venue currently being used for FIFA 2026 in United States, Canada and Mexico frequently exceed capacities of 65,000, 70,000 and even 80,000 spectators. For example, we have the AT&T Stadium in Texas, which exceeds 80,000 capacity. We have MetLife in New Jersey, which exceeds 80,000. We even have Mexico City Estadio Azteca, which exceeds 80,000. By comparison, Talanta sits comfortably within the tier of large international stadiums without entering the category of mega stadiums like we have mentioned above. From a project planning perspective, that is probably appropriate. A larger facility would have significantly increased construction and maintenance costs while creating risk associated with underutilizations after AFCON. The real measure of success will not be how many seats the stadium contains, to be how often those seats are occupied. Now let's move on to the area where we now talk about the nearing the finish line. As of June 2026, the evidence points to a project entering its final stages. Structural works are substantially complete. Training facilities are nearing completion. The pitch has entered the final establishment phase. Landscaping, lighting, power connections, testing, commissioning, and operational readiness activities now dominate the schedule. The project has reached the stage where success is no longer measured in concrete, which has been poured, or steel, which has been erected. It is measured by, in terms of operational readiness. The challenge has shifted from construction to preparation for use. Now, let's make a conclusion. Talanta Sports City is gradually the most significant infrastructure project undertaken in Kenya since independence. It represents a bold attempt to reposition the country within Africa and global sports while preparing for AFCON 2027. The engineering achievement is substantial. The pace of delivery has been remarkable. The involvement of Kenya Defence Forces appear to have strengthened project execution. Yet the project also raises legitimate questions about cost escalation, financing structures, transparency, and long-term value for money. Those questions should not diminish the achievement. Neither should the achievement exempt the project from scrutiny. The true test of Talanta Sports City will not come when the ribbon is cut or when the first match is played. It will come years later, when the crowds arrive or even fail to arrive, when maintenance bills begin accumulating, when the sports fund continues servicing obligation created today, when economists, sports administrators, and taxpayers attempt to answer simple questions. And the question is, was Talanta Sports City merely an impressive stadium, or was it a wise national investment? That verdict, unlike the construction itself, remain unfinished. So thank you for reaching this far. If you are here for the first time, please consider subscribing to this channel. You can also watch other videos that you have made on this sports city and other projects in Kenya, in East Africa, and Africa at large. So thank you, and let's meet in the next one.